we are used to hear a voice, and sometimes we are like little children and we really like stories. When we read stories or listen to stories, what happens is that we make the stories our own. We can embellish, create a little bit of personage, use a little bit of imagination and make the stories very personal.
Whether one is listening to this in Myanmar or from outside the country, we know it is a very difficult time for those of us who hold the Golden Land and its people in our hearts. In trying times like these, we can all use a bit more care and compassion in our lives. So on behalf of the team here at Insight Myanmar, I would like to say, in the traditional way metta is offered, may you be free from physical discomfort. May you be free from mental discomfort. May you not meet dangers or enemies. May you live a peaceful and happy life. And may all beings be free and come out of suffering. And with that, let's move on to the show. I'm pleased for this episode of Insight Myanmar podcast to be joined by U Jagara, and really looking forward to digging into his life, spiritual life, his long-standing interactions with Burma. And I think this is a really special opportunity for our audience to be treated by hearing about some experiences in Burma in a way that we don't ordinarily do on this platform. So this is a long time coming, and I'm so pleased to invite you, Jagara, to speak on this platform.
Thank you very much, Joe. It's also my pleasure just to share the experiences and the gratitude I have for the country and the people over there.
So one of the things I really can't wait to get into your story, and we won't get into it yet because we'll start at the beginning, but just to give a preview for listeners that don't know so much about you. You've spent so many years of your life in Burma, and this really stands out because there are foreign meditators or monastics who come and spend 9 months or 6 months, or come back, a few times in their lifetime to spend a month here and there and just get these kind of touches with the country. And your story really stands out because of really the amount of years you've spent over the course of decades in your lifetime, where you've gone, who you've met, that it's just a much deeper dive, more integrated experience that you've been able to have. So if we could just kick off and learn about your early life and where you're from and your family upbringing and the forces or conditions that led to your first interest and experiences with spirituality.
Well, so talking about childhood, I grew up I was born in Trois-Rivières, it's a small town in Quebec. And when I was 12, then, these small towns over there are kind of sweet, with the forest all around, and the life is quite natural. And my parents also were very kind, and seeing that the children were growing properly and with a good kind of education, but mostly a lot of love and a good sense. So at the age of 12, then my family, like my father especially, wanted he shift a promotion in his business, and He moved to Montreal. This is the big city in Quebec. And then he is a businessman or, an administrator. And then he was in charge before with a small, covering the whole Quebec, a financial institution that was giving and supporting credit for enterprises. So at some point, this company got bought, with this assessment. It got bought by a bigger company, and then we shift to Montreal because of that. So the shift actually was kind of radical when we are 12, and everything is very different. So from the age of 12, then I was in that bigger city and in a private school, and it was not obvious. So uh, so this was the first years over there. Then eventually I changed schools, and then I grew up also, just as a teenager. But for sure, when we reach the age of especially around 15 and 16 and 17, you really ask what's the meaning of life. And you see, we are all looking for some purpose and some explanation of paradox and all of that. So I was like every one of my friends, but I was in that situation, and we do all kinds of things, at high school in these days, drugs, we try all kinds of things that are available. So when I was still, I was a lot of, I was very curious of what was happening outside uh, our little nation, outside our circle of friends, and I was interested in traveling. So when I was 15, then I went to other parts of Canada. Then when I was 16, then I went to Spain and France, and I hitchhiked down to Morocco. And one of the reasons is that, at 16, 17, I was, the hashish was very expensive over there. It was something very rare. So I thought, no, I'm going to go to the source. And I went over there just not to have limits into the possibility of consumption. So after a kind of freaky but cool, not too much extreme, of a summer. Then I came back, like I was 16 and almost 17, and still at that time my interest and my curiosity was pushing me more to the east, because by meeting Europeans, young freaks and hippies, and these young people in these days were traveling to Afghanistan, and they were going to India and Asia, and then they were coming back, and with all kinds of uh, new ways of being in life. So that was triggering my interest. And at that time also, I have an elder brother. Of course, I have also a younger brother. Eventually we did a lot of studies in religion, especially in Buddhism. But my older brother, who was 1 year older than me, then when he was 17, just the year before, he left also with the same kind of existential question. Uh, and then he had gone to Europe and hitchhiked all the way to India. And then he had a 1 year kind of break, sabbatical year before the university or college. He left because he was completely, anxiety and just lack of meaning, and it was a search. So he was supposed to come back in September. So because he was coming back in September, then I also came back, at the end of the summer, because my parents told me, if we give you the permission to go to Europe and Spain and Morocco. You have to come back for your high school, finish your high school. So because of that, I came back, but mostly to see and to speak with my elder brother. So when I met him in September, he said, "Oh, I really found what I was looking for," and. Then he said that if you are interested during the Christmas holiday, I'm going to show it to you. And it's a meditation practice, and it's kind of this is what I was looking for. So when it came to the Christmas vacation, then we went together in the countryside, and so he taught me for about 10 days meditation. So we were in silence and mostly, kind of not speaking. And then he was not understanding so much about what he was doing, but he knew how to do it. The practice also just by looking at him, the way that he was sitting, and the discipline we had with the schedule that we had set up for ourselves. Then after a few days of this type of environment and daily practice, the mind really wake up, and then you come to understand the potential and the dimensions that the mind is offering to us. So for me, it was a big discovery. And of course, at the end of the retreat, then I came back and was still at the high school, and I was quite changed and very interested to know more about the source of this wonderful type of practice. So in these days, there was nothing on Buddhism, in French Canada, in Montreal, and not much, absolutely almost nothing. So I read books and all kinds of things, on yoga, on Taoism, on religion and of different sorts, and also especially about Buddhism. And one, the things that were available about Buddhism was mostly from the Tibetan the Tibetans, with the Dalai Lama and all of that. There was also a school of Zen, with Alan Watts. So anyway, my interest was really keen. So the next year, I continued to practice just as my brother told me, and then by the readings, and so I was quite devoted to that. And the following year, I wanted to have a real teacher. So I asked my brother where could I find someone like that. So he found one of his friend that he had met also in India, and then we heard that Mr. Hover,
Mm.
engineer from California, had started to teach, and he had been given the permission, encouraged by Ubakin. So I found him, and then he said that he was heading up for Europe, and if I was interested, I could join his course in Switzerland. So over there, he was giving 10 days in a row, and I was welcome. So there was no hesitation. My parents helped me to pay for the ticket, and then I ended up there. So from there, it's just again, when I came back, then I wanted to go more. I was ready to investigate and to know more about that, the source. Where is it coming from? And then my brother was saying, no, it's coming from Buddhism, and over there, like in India, where he had gone, then he practiced it, but also he had gone to visit Sri Lanka, and he had gone to some monasteries, and he said, no, over there you have people, monks, and that's all they do the whole day. They just practice meditation. And one of his friend, a good friend that he had met in India, was from Malaysia, and that friend, he was telling my brother that when he was to come back
to Malaysia, then he will go in the forest in Thailand and become a monk and practice, just in the forest. So then I thought, wow, some people can give, years and they can give their time all for that. So the interest was really there. But although I was leaning towards, traveling more, and then maybe, taking the ordination and practicing in these places, my parents and also my brother were saying, no, no, now you are too young. Just continue your studies and go to university. My parents were very keen that I, attend to university. And so after my, the practice gave me more of a discipline and I became a little bit more serious. So the topic, I was not much interested in, in many things just as a career, as a profession. I didn't know what I wanted to do really. So, because I guess, because some of my friends were professional musicians, like the elder brothers of my friends, then I was inspired, and I thought, oh, well, maybe I can study music, right? And there was a music, the music, there is a musical department of music in the university. So, I studied at the college, and then I gave my full time to studying music. And together with the music, especially at the university, then I took some courses in philosophy. But at the age of 24, after 4 years of university, I thought, no, I thought that this is not, I don't want to be a professional musician. It's going to be too challenging. And then I thought, no, the aspiration I have, I was looking at the atlas, the world atlas, and seeing pictures of, Southeast Asia. And I said, wow, I want to discover and go around these things. And I had also started to go to IMS, in 75 when it opened with Jack Confield and Joseph Goldstein. So this gave me, broaden again the possibilities and the alternatives that I could give as a direction to my life, because there you have people who have gone, to various places and tried various types of meditation. Some of these people had gone to Asia also. So I met a few monks who had come back from Southeast Asia. I spoke with them, and there was Jack Confield who had just written his book, about the living Buddhist masters. So the book itself I devoured. I don't know if it's still popular, but it's quite good, the information that you find there. So when I was 24, uh, I asked Joseph Goldstein and Jack Confield if it was okay to go and take the ordination. I was not sure how you will manage as a livelihood. Do you need to pay for your food? And so they told me, no, no, no. People are very happy just to feed you and to support you. So as a Westerner, it's kind of surprising, So, but anyway, I went there, and then before ordaining, they suggest to me, they suggested that if I wanted to ordain, then I will be better off to ordain with Mahasi Sayadaw. And at that time, he had just passed by IMS, in 79. So they said, no, no, you can visit all these other places. And when you want to ordain, then go in Burma and ordain with Mahasi Sayadaw. So I took the book, and I did most of the monasteries and meditation teachers that we see in that book of Cornfield. Then I went to see them and, just to see what was going on there and which type of teaching that they were giving. So eventually, after some months in Thailand as a layperson, then uh, I went to Burma and directly I went to the Mahasi Sasanayakta and I ordained. And this is how it
What
happened.
year was that?
It was in 79.
All right, so that was 1979 that you find yourself going from your growing interest in meditation and spirituality in North America, and through the help of Cornfield and Goldstein, end up in Burma under Mahasi Sayadaw in 1979. Certainly an interesting time to be in Burma, and thank goodness you were allowed then as a foreigner, because there are periods when that was not possible. But this, I imagine, is a very new experience for you as a young man, a young Western man, growing up in very different environment and conditions. So just as far as like, culture and religion, society, people, even like climate and food, etc. What do you remember about arriving in Burma the first time, and what that transition was like?
Well, first I started with my brother. I started in '72, and then I practiced as a layperson over there in Canada. And then in '75, I went to IMS and met Jack Canfield and Joseph Goldstein.
I
And
see.
only then in '79, I made a move, and I traveled to Asia. So I arrived in Thailand first. So of course, when the plane opened the doors, you see, wow, you pick up a different type of temperature and ambience. It's very humid and very very hot. So anyway, this was the first encounter. But when you are young, you don't care so much about the heat. So for me, it was not a problem. I was healthy and so curious, and it was so interesting. Everything was new. This is it. So I traveled in Thailand for about 3 months as a layperson, and then just meeting people and just having a good time. And sometimes this type of trip, for 3 months was including at least half of the time, if not most of the time, visit to monasteries. So I went all around Thailand to see the different monasteries and the different teachers over there. So well, it's just I remember just being there. Then from Canada, it's the tropical climate is so different. And I remember writing to my sister, and they say, well, this type of plant that you grow in your room here, it can grow up to 5 or 6 feet or 10 feet, and it's just a joke. So all the exotic flowers and birds that you find in the in books or in the zoo, then they are just all around. So so that was interesting. And then when I went to when I went to Burma, then at the center there, it didn't take long, to become a monk. It was very easy, and I had a recommendation letter from Jack and Joseph. So Mahasi Sayadaw just accepted me just right away, and after 2 weeks, I ordained. So of course, you just watch your mind and you watch your body, and you just do constantly meditation. So I remember the first weeks, the type of imagination, the type of things that the mind will go through was the amazing type, amazing recipes and a mixture of food that you can have. You can put ananas in your chicken and coconut in this, and so my mind was full of recipe. I even wrote down. I had a little booklet, and I wrote down recipes. So of course, after a month, and I got rid of that because everything was what it was. I didn't need to remember it so much. But as for adaptation, I think it was not easy, over there. When it was in Thailand, it was not a problem because as a layperson, you can buy fruits and you can buy all kinds of things that is good for you. But as a monk, you just go on with what people are giving you. So nevertheless, although at the monastery the food was kind of luxurious, I remember one American, a good meditator who had come also from IMS, and when he arrived, I had been there for already 2 months, and when he arrived after a couple of weeks, the teacher asked him how he was doing, and then he said that, well, I'm doing fine, but I am so afraid to gain weight because the food is so delicious. But still, for a Western body, it's not, in the long run, it's not easy, especially so much rice. You eat a lot of rice. So I suffer, I just got sick. So after 3 months, kind of got sick with, with constipation and all these types of problems. And then I wanted to, in these, during that time, it was not possible to travel in Burma. Huh? And only Mahasi was able to extend the weak visa that was available for the foreigners. Tongpulu Sayadaw also, at the center they could also extend, but no one knew so much about this Sayadaw was living in the north of Burma. So when the 3 months came, at the end, I told them, I said that I wanted to go around and visit the country a little bit, and I asked them to renew my visa, and he said, no, we are not going to renew your visa if you don't stay here. So you can stay here, do your meditation, and then it's fine, but we don't allow you to go around. They were saying, no, this is the hot season and it's very dangerous, like there is a lot of dust and it's very hot, and no, it's not proper for a foreigner. So I think there was some politicals or kind of societal difficulties over there. So they didn't want foreigners to go around. So what I did is I went to Sri Lanka. So in Sri Lanka, the food is much easier for me, for a Westerner. I think you have a lot of milk product like curds and a lot of fruits. In Burma, you didn't have much fruits, and a lot of the food is more suitable for a Westerner. So then I adapted myself quite well over there. But it takes some time, at least 1 or 2 years to adapt properly. And I think I mean, all of us, we know the challenges that are presented to our body for this simple thing. Just the diet is not obvious.
Right. And so going back to those 3 months in Burma with Mahasi Sayadaw, if you can just describe your impressions of Mahasi. This is a great teacher and scholar, meditator, monk in Burma who's long since passed away. And so the opportunity to be able to hear a firsthand account of him as a personality, as an individual, as a teacher, as a meditator, that's getting rarer and rarer with the time that passes. So as far as your memory as a young man can bring us back to what stands out to who Mahasi was as a person?
Well, the foreigners that were going there, like we were about 10 foreigners, from Malaysia, and there was two other Americans, and then one Englishman, and we had a translator. And our meditation teacher was not Mahasi Sayadaw himself. We will meet from time to time Mahasi, but it was kind of rare. And then what I remember from him is that he was so cool. People called him a corpse. But his presence was something very special. And when you are in his presence, you feel that there is nobody there. It's the room is filled with a kind of atmosphere very special. So I think this is all that I can say about him. But also, I think he had a sense of humor, because I saw him again when, as I mentioned, I went to Sri Lanka, and in Sri Lanka I stayed also in a branch of the Mahasi Sayadaw's monastery, and then after a year he came for a visit over there, and then I met him again, and although he doesn't smile so much, he is a kind of funny. You see that he has a very subtle, cold humor, just with the small little words that can be funny if you catch them.
Mm, mm, mm. Right. So now you described leaving Burma, going to Sri Lanka. You talked about some of the differences being the food just a bit easier on for the Western diet. What were some other impressions that come out to leaving one Buddhist country to another, and how your experience was impacted by that?
Well, definitely the cultures are different. So in Burma, like Thailand, also the type of the type of people are more like more like Tibetans or Chinese, a little bit with Indian mix. So the striking contrast when you arrive in Sri Lanka is that people are quite dark. And they look like, I remember my first impression when I was there, just arrived in Sri Lanka. You look at, in the market and in the bus stand, people, they look like pirates, like I had seen films of pirates with people, missing a leg, and then with the parrot on the shoulder, and then with long hair. So this was my first impression of
Mhm.
the Sinhalese people. But very soon, you learn how sweet they are, especially
Yeah,
the way they talk. The way
yeah,
they talk, they say, like, oh, the Sinhalese people, they talk English like they sing a song.
uh,
So it's very interesting and it's quite beautiful. Their language is beautiful, and the way that they are expressing themselves in English also is kind of quite original.
uh, and so then, how does your Buddhist practice proceed now that you're in Sri Lanka?
Well, in Sri Lanka, then I just the idea that you have when you want to become a monk from coming from the West, then you think that the monks are just practicing meditation all the time, in meditation centers or in the forest, or so. This is what you think of what is a monk, full-time meditation. So. This is what we had as an approach. And I remember there was also there were two Canadians at that meditation monastery in Sri Lanka, and we became friends, although they were English speaking and I was a French speaking. We became friends. So we were kind of like my friend, I still have contact with him, like the
Mhm.
Canadian. Like now, I am living close to him, in BC, Canada, and then we remember these days. And our other friends, he was saying that nowadays, the young Westerners who go to to Asia to practice, they don't have the killer instinct that we had with the seriousness and intensity we were giving to the meditation. So meditation was
Interesting.
kind of very intense all the time. There
Yeah.
was no distraction, no phone, no even letters were quite rare. So of course, like you can go on like that, but after a while, after a while, there needs to be more of an adjustment, because like this is what happened. After a while, like 6 months, maybe a year, then by meeting people, and some people took me around. So after some times, I realized that the monks' practice was actually their life. So it was not only in the meditation centers, but their life. It was the monastic. It was a monastic life. The way of living as a monk was what was, the key. The continuity, everything that you are doing, and not only in meditation centers or sitting in your on your cushion. So this is what I learned, how to live as a monk, especially when, like in the meditation centers, I stayed there The first year in Sri Lanka, it was mostly in meditation centers, but after a year or two, I started to go around Sri Lanka, and I settled in the mountains of in the high country of Sri Lanka in a tea plantation where I had gone to see a friend there in a small, very small hermitage, and then we had to feed ourselves by going on alms round, and then this changed the whole practice to go on alms round as a monk. And it's kind of it gives another dimension to the practice itself in the way that you feel, and you reflect that people are supporting you, people are feeding you. And then when you go on your arms around and collect your food, then there is also the importance of keeping a very high state of mind that people are expecting from you somehow. So, this type of human interaction was uplifting for both, the monastic and also the lay person. So it was, it's an activity that is, it's almost a must in in a spiritual journey to keep connected with people. And also, in Buddhism, they say the Buddha didn't permit, he didn't so much encourage monks to be hermits and to store food. So although people, monastics could store food and, just go on without going for alms round for a month or something, even though this is possible, then going every day on the Pindapat, on alms round was it was an exhaustion. It was something commanded by the Buddha. And so now we see why. Now we see why, because it's forcing us to be in contact with with other living beings, and not to get caught up in your your personal fantasies and traumas and all of that stories.
That's really interesting. Just to pause at that reflection, because it's also making me think about the experience of a Westerner doing intensive retreats or practicing meditation, maybe in their local sangha in a Western country, and trying to develop spiritually that way. And so when you look at the development of spiritual faculties, especially in the Buddhist sense, what do you feel is missing from not being able to partake in the alms rounds? And we should mention the alms round are reciprocal, so you don't have to be a monk necessarily to be able to benefit from the experience. You could be on either side of that giving, and you're then taking part in this communal expression and connected experience. And so, for someone trying to develop in spirituality, certainly we don't want to say that you have some barrier or impediment that you can't grow spiritually if you're not in a place that has an alms round. But what is it that the alms round brings to the practitioner on either side of that equation that they wouldn't necessarily get from being in a spiritual community outside of a Buddhist country?
What they will get, I think, is a sense of no self, but also, the principle that we see there is the importance of interaction.
Mm-hmm.
So it's all about not communication, but relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So, as you mentioned, although we, some of us or some people cannot, those who are serious practitioners cannot go on arms rounds because they are not monastic. Still, the quality of relationship is possible. The relationship you have not only with people and food, but your relationship with life in general. So I think this is the thing that we can learn by going on arms round. Also, the arms round really brings that aspect of renunciation, that you have nothing, you depend on people. The only thing you have is just a bowl and a robe, and there is no tomorrow, and you are just everything becomes so alive because you never know what will happen in the future, but also in the moment. You are just you have to empty yourself of all your worries, and just by it's a complete letting go. And sometimes if your mind is not like that, then when people are offering to you, then you get it from the people, because when people are giving, then they are also letting go, and they have a lot of saddha, their faith, and their inspiration is very strong when they are giving. So for them, whether the monk is very highly spiritually advanced or not, uh, although it matters for them, it doesn't matter so much. It is the symbol. Also, what it awakens in people who are giving is the inspiration of something else than worldly conditions of life and death, and eating, and getting sick, and getting to medicine and then dying and all of that. Then there is something else, and the monk is representing that symbol. So this is what they are giving to. This is aspect of the Dhamma. So it's their practice. They don't give necessarily to an individual, but to what not the project, but to what they see, what in what that person is representing. So they send you back that image. So people are bowing to you. They go on the floor, and then they salute you, and they pay so much respect, and they give what sometimes they cannot even eat themselves. So it's very impressive, because you receive, what you receive things that is well, it's kind of interesting.
That's beautiful. And so then, staying with your experiences in Sri Lanka, you had spent uh, an extended period of time practicing instructions according to the Mahasi technique, and then you come to Sri Lanka. How did your practice change? What were you then practicing there?
Oh, well, when I started, before I come to Mahasi, I started to integrate and incorporate this Mahasi method when I went to IMS in '75. So before
Mm-hmm.
I was doing mostly the Goenka method.
Mm-hmm.
And with hover also, this is Ubakin. So I was quite dedicated to that method of practice. And even when I was at the Mahasi Center, although I was practicing the way that they were telling me, the background of the Ubakin method was still there. So when I was in Sri Lanka, I was still dedicated to that. And when the first year that I was there, Goenka also came to Sri Lanka, and he gave his first course of meditation. So I joined that. I joined that course, and the following year I went to India, and I started to go there almost yearly during the winter. I was going there to spend 2 or 3 months and doing intensive practice at Igatpuri when they had opened the center. But otherwise, when I was coming back to Sri Lanka, then it was just the monk of a life, and the life of a monk. And I was lucky, just to have the freedom of living in an hermitage and living also in a village without the pressure of the community of monks. That it was kind of freestyle. And the place where we were living in Sri Lanka, the person who had established it was a professor of university from Czechoslovakia in the 50s, or so that hermitage was full of books, and the library was fantastic. So we could just hang around and read a lot of books, and combine that with our practice.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so we didn't have any obligation. The only obligation we had was to feed ourselves and to go on alms round. Otherwise, we just practice and read and spoke, with each other sometimes when we were together.
That's interesting. So you had this really combined sense of practice from practicing different with different Ubakin teachers, Hover and Goenka, and then going with Mahasi Sayadaw, then being in different monastic environments across Southeast Asia, having access to different books, peers that you're talking to that are along the spiritual journey with you, the wider monastic community. So it sounds like in this period of time, it was something of an experimentation, but not just a free-flowing experimentation, do whatever you want, obviously, but a kind of playfulness or creativity, but within a structure and within certain formats where you know where those lines are. Would that be correct to say, or how would you
Oh,
characterize it?
yeah. I think this is quite correct, and this is somehow, if we compare that to a Western situation, this is somehow the advantage of living over there in a tradition that has lasted for centuries, huh? And then also the values they give to monasticism is that when you are in robes, then you have to fit with a kind of behavior, huh? And there is something that is expected from you. So it's a structure also that allows you to devote your time fully to the Dhamma. So this kind of situation is very positive, and also is very strengthening, because you when you go to sleep, that's the only thing you think about. When you
Mhm.
wake up in the morning, that's the only thing you think about. So your all days are spent just investigating the Dhamma, and then you are supported by the society also, and the society also sends you back the image that you are supposed to represent. So somehow it's also helpful, to wear the robes and to go with the precepts, because you know that when you are in that situation, then there are things that is not suitable to do. Also, there is a kind of restriction, but that restriction can sometimes, for some people, it's difficult. For me, it was easy, it was natural, but eventually, that type of restriction is really putting your mind and then also your whole life in that pot that allows you just to cook all the ingredients that you have been able to get from here and there. So, by reading and then by meeting all kinds of teachers and people who also are practicing different things, then it comes to be yours. So these years, it's we could say like it's like the old wines, or
Mm.
Iso, or there is a kind of maturity that comes just by doing that, just by living simply, and then spending your time with this as the as your main purpose, your main reason for living.
Mm. Another thing I'm thinking as I hear this, because we're talking a bit about the contrast between East and West, and also from kind of structured, intensive lay environment for meditation, and the monastic community, which is also different, as you said. One of your misinformed biases, which I also had as a misinformed bias, and I think many in the West do before they know about monkhood, is that being a monk is simply, well, you just meditate all day, every day, all minutes, every minute. That's just the experience of being a monk. And no, it's not that. It's much more richness than just the formal aspect of sitting on a cushion and meditating. That's part of it, but there's much more that goes into it. And you're painting a contrast as well between this experience of uh, being in a lineage, or practicing a certain technique, and the creativeness or playfulness of finding going through your own understanding of what you want to practice and what it means and how it aligns. And this reminds me of the words of actually someone, I don't know if you remember him. He met you many years ago and has referenced experiences with you. Had spent many years in Burma too. He's an Australian man named Greg Kleiman, who was a monk for about 15 years in Burma. and went through many different lineages and traditions there, as well as Thailand and Sri Lanka. And he uses the expression panning for gold. He talks about how you're always panning for gold as you're going through these different lineages and teachers and techniques. You're trying to gain the value and the benefit of what they're bringing, but you're also aware somewhat of, for lack of a better word, the propaganda or the way that the mission is defined according to their own categories, that you're trying, in his experience, he was trying not to buy into the overall message, but to pan for gold and just get the best of what those different traditions and messages had to offer, while also using his critical faculties to align his own experience and practice as a monk and then as a lay meditator into what worked for him and how his own spiritual practice would develop. I think this is an opportunity that one has in Buddhist countries in Southeast Asia, as well as being a monk and having the time to really devote to this experience. And I think this is also what contrasts to being a meditator in a Western environment, largely because you don't have the plethora of opportunities to be able to learn and to grow and to absorb different ways of life and teachings. You really kind of fit into a certain teacher or practice or methodology, and it's harder to find, I think, your own path within that messaging coming out.
It's interesting to see the tradition itself. So it's a tradition that has been kept alive for centuries in Asia. So of course, any tradition, get rigid and get formal and systematic and become organized and politics and all of that. So the tradition is, as you say, looking for gold. So the tradition is carrying a very deep message that is not necessarily obvious. It's like all kinds of all the religions also have come to that one way, where there is nowhere else to go. In the sense that you just keep to the superficial, you don't go to the root. But definitely, the Buddhist tradition has still that living, that living, Dhamma, that living practice that helps you to connect with the essence of the teachings. And I think many Westerners also, myself included, when we arrive there, then we have a very big ideal of what is monastic, what is monk or nun, and we project a lot, and it doesn't take very long to get quite disappointed, because when the monks there, the nuns also, they are all humans with with their weakness and of course with their strength, but they are still human, and they are living in a tradition. So somehow, it becomes their job. So this is the difficulties that local monks are facing, in the sense that when they become monk, it becomes a profession, and they get a job, they get a temple, and then they just carry on a tradition, and they don't have the chance to give some more time for investigation and for deepening their understanding of their own religion. So us as Westerners, we come from outside, and then we have that keenness of wanting to go to the source and really, seeing what it's all about, and put aside, the things that are not that necessary. You have a lot of things that are, we could say superficial, but this is what kept the tradition alive, like the ceremonies and the social roles of monastics, and the role also of a temple, and all the dynamic of Buddhism over there it creates a kind of ambience. And this is what, last week we had an interview with Stephen Batchelor, and then he was saying that the advantage of a tradition and the advantage of living in these, traditional Asian places, like in monasteries, is the ambience. that it carries. So you arrive there, and then the ambience is beyond words. This is what it conveys. So anyway, for sure, like I think the Westerners who used to go there in these days, now it is a bit changed, but we were very lucky because we had a lot of freedom and also a lot of respect from the locals. Like in Sri Lanka, even in Burma, the Westerners had been colonizer. So when they saw Westerners, becoming monks and nuns, then their faith was so strong that they did everything that will help you to go on with your practice, and yeah, so the freedom, I think, that you could find in these days in some monasteries was very special. And this is also one of the things that was too that challenging sometimes for Westerners, because there was not enough structure. You had to make your own
Yeah.
schedule, your own day, and then it's not obvious. So after a year or two, then you say, okay, now so what? So if you don't know how to organize yourself properly, then you just think, oh no, this is useless, and you disrobe. So I think this is the reason why many Westerners just spend a few years over there, and after that they get fed up, and they
Mhm.
they don't they come back. This is, of course, you have other reasons, but this is one of them.
And I think that is one of the real advantages, one many advantages, but one in particular that the intensive meditation courses bring is it gives that structure for you, and for those coming from a very different environment to be told, this is when you wake up, this is when you eat, this is when you rest, this is when you might do chores, this is when you get information and you learn, this is when you have question and answers. It's a very helpful thing to just not have choices and to just step into this routine, this flow, and follow into it. I think the danger comes with anything when that structure then locks you into a certain kind of place where you're not able to improvise or to think on your own of different ways to adjust the structure or whatnot. And I think that's where many meditators, including my own journey, that have described coming to Burma or to other Southeast Asian countries, and they describe a sense of freedom that comes when they're able to come with that structure they've been following on a course, but then step into a monastic environment where they realize, oh, I don't have to follow the same structure that I've grown up with and that has shaped me. I'm very grateful to that, but I'm able to now make some of my own decisions. I actually want to rest a little longer, or I want to wake up a little earlier, or want to spend more time learning some of this information. And I think when that creativity and playfulness comes to one spiritual practice in a way that a monastic setting allows, then you have the possibility of having the best of both worlds, where you've been given a structure and know the value of what to follow. You're not just free floating, but you're able to make that structure work for you and have a little more independence in making your own decisions.
Yes, exactly. And since you speak about intensive practice in centers, in monasteries or meditation center, then yes, this is giving a structure, and this can be very useful and quite helpful to keep us grounded with the practice itself. But the point, is that this can become artificial. So
Yeah.
people who just learn in intensive practice, then sometimes they are lost when they go out of the center, and they don't know how to adapt it. So this is the difference here with the monk, or nun, is that although you can practice intensively in a place, still when you go out, then the practice is, you are forced somehow, to continue your practice, because every little thing is important, because your whole life is that, no? And then the society also is putting the reminder, is giving the reminder back to you. So this is the difference. This is why also the creativity that you are talking about is more easily integrated, because of the social support that you are having.
I think it's also interesting. I just want to prompt you with a question that I think might be obvious to you, but not obvious to many of our listeners. And that's, we're talking about creativity and playfulness as a monk. And I'm just laughing because I think that for those that are not so accustomed or familiar with the monkhood, you think of like the orthodoxy of the monkhood being really the opposite of playfulness or creativity, right? You know, it's this religious orthodoxy, that the strict protocol, the sternness that you're stepping into, and this and even this mundane kind of monolithic similarness. And the joke I often make is that just because monks all have the same fashion sense and the same hairstyle, we tend to think as outsiders that, well, it must be this monolithic organization. And of course, we know it's anything but. And I think the dynamicism and the inventiveness that can be found among the Sangha, I think is sometimes hidden by the sameness that it appears from the outside. And so I wonder if you could take a moment to talk about and dispel some of these stereotypes that one might have outside, whether one is a lay meditator or just someone completely outside of the Buddhist experience that is familiar with Myanmar, but just looking at monks in a certain way, and talk about how, as a monk, of course, you have the Vinaya and you have the monastic protocols and rules and cultural expectations and timetable and et cetera that you have to follow. But you also have the opportunity of exploring this playfulness and creativity in your practice and in your life that might not be so readily apparent for someone that just sees it as this these rules, this religiosity, this protocol that you have to follow, and where the creativeness and the playfulness can come into that.
Well, I think you are touching a very important aspect of the practice itself, huh? And creativity and the playfulness, or the joy. Actually, playfulness also is a sign of being joyful and happy. This comes from the mind. So because those who are practicing are so intimate with what's happening in their mind, they know with the experience, and they know how to make themselves happy. So this is one aspect of the development, is that there is a kind of natural happiness that starts to be part of you when you are not forced to do anything special. Then that space gives you peace and also clarity and also happiness. There is a kind of freedom that is very light. So from there, creativity is a state of mind, and whether like now you are talking about monastics, so keep it to we will keep it to this model. Also, in the field of monks, or in the field of monasticism, then the mind is creative. Also, the mind of these people can be they can have these qualities. So whatever they are doing, whatever they are saying, whatever they are thinking, is creative. Also, it can be beautiful, can be loving, can be also peaceful and harmonious, because the mind has touched that source of creativity. And if I look at the friends and the people I have met in monasteries, and some of the most creative and artistic people that I have known in my life were
Wow.
monks. So many of my friends, they were just artists. And monks friends, they were just artists. And also about their lightness, and most of some of the most funny people that I have met were monks. So, so humor and having a good time, in the sense of not losing your time, but being able to approach life with lightness, and with lightness in the sense of easiness, and also in the sense of clarity. And humor is is the outcome of the advantage of a monastic life, because of course they can have fun, and they can be like this, because they don't have so much responsibilities. They don't need to feed their children. They don't need to work for for their education, and the life is much easier. They just go with the ball. I remember one of the sentence that inspired me to become a monk when I was 17 or 18. Anyway, with the first discourses of Goenka, he was saying. He was speaking about the monks. In these days, he was speaking more about monks. Later on, he didn't speak so much about that, but he was saying, he was saying of the monks, that these people, they have nothing. They have nothing. They just have a bowl and their robes and their medicine if they are sick, but they are so happy, they are so serene. Also, just to say that what we need in life to be happy is not so much, food and then medicine and clothes and shelters, but our society is imposing so many other things that we tend to see happiness in the achievement of the satisfaction and never the getting our happiness from outside, where then there is no end. We will have dozen pairs of shoes and then all kinds of cars and houses, but the happiness is not coming from that. So I think the symbol of having nothing but being so full of happiness and love is given to the monk, was given also to a monastic in the Goenka phrase. So
I'm also thinking, like in the Zen tradition, the monks can develop a sense of they can develop their practice and their spiritual practice, and then there's so much art that goes along with being a Zen monk, whether it's calligraphy or some
yeah,
other type of artistic expression that comes from the pure mind, and Zen is developed in all of these ways. But in Theravada, that's not so much the case. And I'm recalling conversations I've had with monastics like Arya in the Qian Mianyang tradition. She's from Switzerland, and she talked about how dance was a big part of her life, and she had to give up dance to become a nun, and did so, and talked about that journey. Or I'm thinking of like Bhikkhu Rahula, who we've talked to, who's from Mexico, and his background was music, and professional musician, a love of music, and he talked about his renunciation of music to become a monk. And so obviously when you're becoming a Theravada monk, you do have to give up the expression of music, the expression of dance, as well as other types of artistic expression that one can possibly do in other forms of, well, certainly spiritual practice, but even like Zen monkhood. And so when you talk about monks being some of the most artistic, creative, playful people that you know, I wonder if you can describe how that sense of creativity and playfulness comes out when there are certain artistic expressions that are simply not allowed while you're in robes.
Well, of course, if we look at the tradition itself, in a serious Asian, South Asian monastery, it's kind of serious. Like all the monks, if we give the permission for monks to practice their instrument, it will be very noisy everywhere, playing trumpets, and so music is not allowed. This is one of the one of the reason, and dance also in Theravada is not so encouraged either. But gracefulness. What about gracefulness? So the way people move, this can be a dance. So and the way people speak can also be a musical expression. So for that, this is good. But I had the chance, to live in a hermitage, like in Sri Lanka, especially, and then all the monks that were passing our place, they could express their talents. Like some were, they did some paintings on the wall, and they were doing their drawings. And I had a good friend also. We had some who had some Vietnamese descendants, and then he was doing gardening. So although strict Theravada will not allow it, that friend, he turned our hermitage into a botanical garden. So He was so skillful, and then he brought so many plants from here and there, and then he stayed at that place for 12 years. So it didn't take long, and people were just coming to see, the beauty of the garden. But whatever he was doing, like we needed to take care of the place. So with we needed tools, and so he will carve everything, to how to say, the handle for axe or hammer. Then he will carve these things, and so this is what it is, and creativity also. Some are writers, so some they will go into writings, and but for sure, the expression of creativity in monasteries can be limited, but we can detect, and then we can see also the mind of an artist just by being with the person, or the way that they interact. And then you speak about music, and I was also a musician myself, as I said, and then we look in the first Theravada monks that especially that settled in Sri Lanka after the war. The Europeans, you had Nyanamoli, Nyanamoli, the famous translator that was coming from UK. He was also a musician. He was an harpist, a kind of a very good harpist. And his teacher, the Nyana Tiloka, also was a famous and one of the first German translator. He translated a lot of the Tipitaka into German. He was a composer, and he was a virtuoso of violin, and he could play piano and all of these things. So, of course, I mean, he was the musician. He was just such a complete musician, and he was asked that question. Well, Bante, you are a composer and then a virtuoso, and what you are missing? What you are not missing? Music in this, in this very ascetic environment of monastery. And what he said was that the satisfaction that he was getting, or that he could get from music, had nothing to do with the satisfaction that he will get by contemplating death. So Maranatha, meditation on death was his favorite type of meditation. It was a source of happiness that could not be matched with any kind of music. Of course, we can question that, but just to say that when we are successful, and our meditation is really getting boiling. The happiness that is coming from that has nothing to do with any sense pleasure. And art, music or nice paintings is still related to sense pleasures. So that's why that it is said that the art is coming from the mind. And creativity also is coming from the mind. So in states of meditation, the mind can get so refined that it is floating. It is, it cannot be described by way of light, by way of happiness, by way of clarity, and also by way of creativity. All the potentials are there, but it's not necessarily expressed. But it's there. You are touching that dimension of art and creativity deep within yourself. So whatever you will do will be a piece of art, and it's not necessary to do it, to express it.
That's beautiful, beautiful to contemplate. And I know that my journey with meditation, as I started to dig more into the Goenka structure and system and get the benefit from how the practice was, I started in my kind of more early immature phase of trying to figure out integrations, which I think many people go to. I came to that with two characteristics of mind innate in me: the sense of creativity and playfulness, and being critical in nature. And in that intensive meditation structure, I went through these periods when I was young in my practice and young in life of feeling like I had this binary choice to make, that I was either going to develop on this road of liberation, and to do so, I had to give up my creativity. I had to give up my critical nature of mind and absorb this technical practice and methodology of what was being taught to me, or I had to continue in my playfulness and creativity and critical nature, but then I couldn't practice meditation. And for me, it's been a journey, as I think it is for many, to learn how these different elements come together, whether you're a lay practitioner or a monastic, or to what degree you're continuing to find these integrations of how do I go into this intensive practice and then bring this into my life, and find out where this all fits together. I think that continues to be an effort on the path, and realizing, like, how do I follow this this meditation technique and this Buddhist path, Theravada Buddhist path, and how do I continue to bring in these creative and critical parts of my nature and my mind, to not be at odds with what this practice is, but to actually support it. And that can be an effort in maturing and growing, I think.
Well, yes, we had a teacher, a very famous teacher in Sri Lanka, and, it's one of his motto. He had this very interesting motto, and then one of them was, if you put the Dhamma into a technique, the only thing you get is the technique. So just to say that methods and techniques are important, but the Dhamma is much bigger than that. So it's not the main thing, right? So they can be useful, but we should not get stuck with that. So this is one thing. So if the structure by which we approach the Dhamma is too tight and so limited to a technique, then we will always be limited. We will go with the side, the eyes just closed. And this is not the Dhamma. About the critical aspect, then the approach to Buddhism, the approach to Dhamma has to be critical. Like just we remembered, the Karama Sutta. So it's an inquiry and a questioning and non-acceptance of what the texts say, what the teacher says, what the gurus or what the tradition and whoever else say. You have to be very critical. Also, I think this is important for us to be reminded. And this aspect of criticism, or this aspect, at least, this aspect of inquiry, not suspicion, but inquiry and skepticism is very healthy, because from question, only from questioning, we can come to new conclusions. And then reality is not something that is based on a static conclusion. Reality is always changing. That means our questioning should always be there. So when we have an inquisitive mind, a critical mind, then it can be creative, because we are ready to let the past be the past. We are ready to die to what we have formed as a theory and as a conclusion, and then open up to what is new. So this is creativity, to die from the old, and then to get born with the new. What is happening now? What can I do now? And what is possible? So yeah, so I think keeping that in mind, then all the Dhamma, the Buddhist teaching is leading us to liberation. So what is that? What is liberation? What are we getting liberated from? So we are liberating. We are getting liberated from a prison, from illness, from a disease, from all kinds of things that are putting us down, but liberated also from our views and opinions and prejudices and all these things. So what is the meaning of liberation? Mm.
The other thing I want to go back to your story with, and I do want to move forward with, as you went to Sri Lanka, there are just so many threads that were interesting to pull and pull off the side of the road and reflect on the view, so to speak. And that's, you had referenced how you were talking with one of your friends from the days of old and mentioning how difficult your experience was in finding the Dhamma then and how much easier it's become. I think that's true every couple of decades you can make that statement. I think if you were to look at the couple decades before your time there, it was quite a bit more difficult than what you found, and a couple decades on, it's gotten a bit easier yet. And just reflect on what it means to have to weather and go through these difficulties to find the practice of liberation, and then what it means to just kind of have them more delivered at your doorstep. And several decades after your experience of being there, intensive meditation courses in really every community around the world, and certainly the West, have sprung up. And then even after that, then you had the internet, and you didn't even have to necessarily go physically leave your room. You then had the ability of taking your own self courses and accessing all kinds of audio discourses and commentaries and books and websites and everything else, YouTube, that's even a step beyond the intensive meditation course being offered physically in your community, that you have the virtual space there. And so it seems there's this balance between the ease of being able to access these things in ways that can bring more people in, that might be somewhat of a good thing. But then it also seems that having to make more of an effort and see really the value of what you're getting, and how and the strength of your aspiration in overcoming all of these odds and challenges to really find what you're looking for, to then appreciate the value. It's not just something delivered to you. That's a benefit in the other direction. So as you look at these different eras and different ways to access the Dhamma, how do you find that balance?
Well, yeah, for sure, for sure the advantage or the thing we get by, by having gone there and then really made the search just from scrap and going to the roots is very different than, the modern conditions now, where we can get anything from anywhere in the world in our plate. And this is the difference. This is the difference. It doesn't mean that because you can get everything in your plate that you are not going to enjoy it and you are not going to to take benefit out of it. But it's very different than going to a place where you learn how to cultivate the the vegetables that are part of the dish, and to cook and to prepare and all of these things. So what is the middle way? I think as long as we don't get stuck into our comfort, and then as long as we are not getting complacent in this easiness, like the modern society is offering us so far. Like if we are in some part of the Western world, it's kind of the standard is very high compared to the time of history. So if we don't get the sleep in our in a kind of complacence, then the search can still be there, and I think it is very important to keep it alive. So, for myself, I know how to do it, but for people who don't have other alternatives and are just soaking in this kind of well, in a way, it's a kind of easy. You can get any book, any kind of teaching, any kind of teachers, and whenever you want. So I think it's a drive. If we don't lose the drive, and then if we don't have, some people were, they were mentioning, if we look at they were mentioning the reasons why they are practicing, and it has to come from a very serious inquiry about the source of unsatisfaction, the source of suffering. So the four messengers of the Buddha that the Buddha encountered with death, with illness, sickness and old age, and then also with the ascetic. These four messengers are very important to keep us motivated. So if we don't have that kind of fire in ourselves, we are going to get stuck. It's just like it is just like consuming any kind of thing, and then you don't go to the depth, because as soon as you find it difficult, you can change your program and then go to another another system, and you will always be able to entertain yourself, and then just to be in a state of complacency and comfortable and comfort. So I think sometimes we need a slap from reality that helps us to wake up to the fact that we are going to die, and that the sickness and all these things are just part of our existence. So when we are aware of that, and then to very deep aspect, then we will keep that kind of eagerness just to keep our life in that direction. No, it's a sense of urgency, saṃvega, that they mention in Buddhism.
Right. So I want to go back to your story, because we left off when you had left Burma after the 3-month visa expired, and you're now in Sri Lanka, and you describe a bit of your extended stay there. If you could pick off from there and tell us what that experience was like, and then what happened after that.
Oh well, then then like in all in Sri Lanka, I lived about 15 years. And the first 10 years, I didn't go back to the West. So I was in Sri Lanka, sometimes going to India for intensive practice. Sometimes also I will pass by Thailand and spend a few months in the monasteries in Thailand. But for the first 10 years, I didn't go back to the West. But at some point, I went back just to visit, and at some point also, I was, I had the possibility to teach meditation. I was invited, so I started to give a few retreats in the West. So I will go and spend a few months, and then I will come back to Sri Lanka. So, nevertheless, most of my time for these 15 years were in Sri Lanka. So after about 15 so years in Sri Lanka, then you have kind of gone all around the culture, and then you know everything that you were looking for. You know everything that was of interest for you before, and then you saturate, you get fed up, and you say, okay, now what's next? What can I learn more? What is there for me to discover and to use for my education, or for my motivation of being alive. So I got saturated. Also after 15 years, then what happened is that while the previous year when I had gone to Europe, then I fell in love with a lady, and then I kept in touch with her, and then she invited me to stay with her, and then just to spend the summer with with her over there. And this is what I did. So I disrobed for about 4 months. And then I had a break because I had enough of that monastic life. I had enough also of Sri Lanka and Asia. And, I really wanted to have a break and to see what my life was leading me, and what all these practice had given me. So before I left Sri Lanka, then one of my old friend over there, the English Canadian, that remained most of his time in the meditation center in Sri Lanka. Then before leaving, I went to visit him, and it was in 1995, and we just heard that Burma, Myanmar, had opened their doors again for foreigners to visit, and it was possible to have longer visa and also it was possible to stay there for much easily than it was before. It was also possible to travel. So this excited us. So before I leave Sri Lanka for France and Canada, then we made a pact with that friend, and I said, okay, now in about 4 months after the rainy season, I'm going to come back, and together we are going to visit Burma. No, and then we are going to see what's happening there. So this is why when September came, October, then I told my friend, I had mentioned that to her before, that at that time, then I will have to go back and do that that trip to Myanmar with my friend, and I didn't know, so she was informed before. So this is what happened. So I went back to Sri Lanka, and then I met my friend, and I took the robes again. I took the samanera, and just to take it easy, because I had enough. When you spend about some months in France and with a girl, it's kind of very well. It's a new life, and well, it's things to discover, aspects of life that I had not so much investigated and known before. So I was not that much interested to remain as a monastic. I was keeping all of that open, but still I had that contract with, that engagement with my friends. So we went to Myanmar, and the first thing that we did is that we had a friend, who had been there for a couple of years, and he was living in the Pa Auk Monastery, and he said to us that we should come directly there, and then to see the place, and the teacher, the Pa Auk Sayadaw, was a very good teacher, and also the place was exceptional. So although we wanted to visit around the country, this was my interest right at the beginning. When I left Burma after Mahasi, then my interest was to see the different types of teachings, the different types of schools that was available in the Burmese tradition, but it was not possible. So when that possibility came, then this was my interest. Nevertheless, I went with my friend. We went to Pa Auk Monastery in Molanyang, and we were charmed by the teacher and also by the place. And for me, it was a new world. Well, like when I said that I was in Sri Lanka for at least 10 years without going back to the West, like I was in there, and also in India. So after 5 years being in Sri Lanka, as a monk, then I had, when I had gone to Igatpuri, then I was proposed to to assist Goenka ji for his teaching, and I accepted. So this is the reason also why I was a meditation teacher, and this is why I had gone to Europe and Canada before I met that girl, that lady. So yes, so I taught in the Goenka tradition for about 10 years.
Thank you for that. That's a lot there, and there's three elements I realize that are now coming up that I think each deserve their own time and space. We've already gone on for a bit, so we'll get to that in the next session. But just to flesh those out, one is the experience of just what it's like going from being a monastic for many years in Southeast Asia to a layperson in a relationship in the West, and then back to Asia again. That itself is an extraordinary story. Then there's your time with the Goenka tradition and being a teacher in the Goenka tradition and being more involved in their practices and what that was like. And then the third, which you've just teased here, is your introduction to Pa Auk Sayadaw and your many years that will continue in the Pa Auk system. So these are all three really incredible topics to explore in the detail they deserve. I think this is a great introduction to leading up to this point at the precipice of these great conversations. So I think this is also a natural time to close and to pause and to hopefully continue this in later sessions.
Yeah. I think this is right. I think that these new doors. I think this is what is mostly is what will be interesting for people. Or anyway. let's see.
We'd like to take this time to thank our generous supporters who have already given. We simply could not continue to provide you with this content and information without the wonderful support of generous donors, listeners, and friends like you. Each episode helps in providing access to one more voice, one more perspective, one more insight. Every donation of any size is greatly appreciated and helps us continue this mission. We greatly appreciate your generosity, which allows us to maintain this platform. Thank you. If you would like to join in our mission to support those in Myanmar who are being impacted by the military coup, we welcome your contribution in any form, currency, or transfer method. Your donation will go on to support a wide range of humanitarian and media missions, aiding those local communities who need it most. Donations are directed to such causes as the Civil Disobedience Movement, CDM, families of deceased victims, internally displaced person IDP camps, food for impoverished communities, military defection campaigns, undercover journalists, refugee camps, monasteries and nunneries, education initiatives, the purchasing of protective equipment and medical supplies, COVID relief, and more. We also make sure that our donation fund supports a diverse range of religious and ethnic groups across the country. We invite you to visit our website to learn more about past projects as well as upcoming needs. You can give a general donation or earmark your contribution to a specific activity or project you would like to support, perhaps even something you heard about in this very episode. All of this humanitarian work is carried out by our nonprofit mission, Better Burma. Any donation you give on our Insight Myanmar website is directed towards this fund. Alternatively, you can also visit the Better Burma website, betterburma.org, and donate directly there. In either case, your donation goes to the same cause, and both websites accept credit card. You can also give via PayPal by going to paypal.me/betterburma. Additionally, we can take donations through Patreon, Venmo, GoFundMe, and Cash App. Simply search Better Burma on each platform and you'll find our account. You can also visit either website for specific links to these respective accounts or email us at info@betterburma.org. That's Better Burma, one word, spelled BETTERBURMA.org. If you would like to give in another way, please contact us. We also invite you to check out our range of handicrafts that are sourced from vulnerable artisan communities across Myanmar, available at alokacrafts.com. Any purchase will not only support these artisan communities, but also our nonprofit's wider mission. That's Aloka Crafts, spelled ALOKACRAFTS, one word, alokacrafts.com. Thank you so much for your kind consideration and support.